You know you've messed up when people stop hating you and just forget you exist. That's kind of where EA is right now. Once the titan of gaming, now it's clinging to three cracked pillars and praying Battlefield doesn't implode. Again. So buckle up, because today we're diving into the glorious downfall of the studio that somehow turned gold into garbage. And trust me, it might be way worse than you think. So Jason Schreier just dropped another bombshell. EA laid off 400 more people. Yeah, including folks from Respawn, the studio behind Apex Legends and Jedi Survivor. And that's just the latest round. Since 2022, they've done this 8 times, 8 rounds of mass layoffs in 3 years. At this point, it's less of a surprise and more of an annual company tradition, like a holiday, but instead of cake, you get a cardboard box and a LinkedIn post. And when I saw the news, it hit me. Maybe it's finally time we talked about it. EA's future might not exist the way we think it does. Like, 5 years from now, it's not crazy to imagine this company being gutted, rebranded, or straight up absorbed by someone else. Now let's be honest. Most of you watching aren't losing sleep over EA's problems. The vibe is more like, oh no, anyway. And honestly, that's kind of the point. There was a time, maybe 15 years ago, when we actually cared, when a new game from EA really meant something, when the name alone could stop the gaming world in its tracks. We talk a lot about how Warner Bros. Games is circling the drain with its 4 sad little pillars, but we rarely give EA the same energy. Probably because EA still releases stuff regularly, so it feels like they're doing okay. But once you zoom in, it gets ugly. Like, how did we not notice this earlier ugly? Since the HD era kicked in, it's just been this slow-motion collapse. Iconic franchises like Battlefield, SimCity, and Dead Space either fading into irrelevance or getting run into the ground by baffling decisions. Even the success stories, Plants vs. Zombies or Mirror's Edge, they all got smothered under bad management and worse priorities. Now here's the kicker. EA's biggest problem isn't just bad leadership, it's scale. They're so massive that every mistake hits like a meteor. And the worst part? They've built this corporate structure where creative risks go to die. Even when they land a hit, it gets stretched, milked, and mutated until no one recognizes it anymore. And if you really want to understand how bad the internal culture's gotten, just look at how they handle development pipelines. Take Frostbite, for example. It's a graphics engine originally made for first-person shooters, but EA forced nearly all their studios, yes, even ones making RPGs and sports games, to use it. That's like telling a chef they can only cook with a microwave, no matter the dish. Frostbite is notoriously rigid and hard to work with, especially for genres it wasn't designed for. Developers have spent years fighting the tech just to get basic systems working, which delays projects, burns out teams, and wrecks creativity. EA's exclusive deal with Star Wars should have been a slam dunk. Like, imagine being the only company allowed to make console and PC games for one of the most iconic franchises on the planet. Right as Disney was rebooting it with a shiny new trilogy. That's not just a golden goose, that's a golden goose with a subscription plan. And what did EA do? They tripped over their own lightsaber, twice. Both Battlefront games launched in such awful states they practically sparked a rebellion. Ironic, right? The backlash was so bad it didn't just piss off players, it embarrassed Disney enough to let the exclusivity contract expire. You really gotta mess up when Disney looks at your billion-dollar deal and goes, yeah, we're good. Now Warner is out here talking about their future being built on 4 IP pillars: Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Batman, and Mortal Kombat. But EA got only 3 left, and let's just say, those legs are wobbly. First up is Battlefield, once a worthy rival to Call of Duty, now a running gag. The franchise has lost its identity, its player base, and most of its dignity. Still, EA's betting everything on the next Battlefield title. We're talking 4 different studios working on it. DICE is leading the charge, like usual. But then you've got Criterion, a team known for racing games. Then there's Ripple Effect, which was supposed to be making fresh IPs but got sucked into this mess, and Motive, the team behind the solid Dead Space remake, who also got reassigned. Oh, and to top it off, Vince Zampella, the guy who made Respawn what it is now overseeing the whole thing. The man must be exhausted. And here's the terrifying part. If this new Battlefield doesn't absolutely crush it, if it's just good instead of phenomenal, they're screwed. Not because the game itself will be bad, but because EA needs a miracle, not a decent product. Anything short of a mega hit, and the foundation cracks even further. Now, for those wondering what's actually going on under the hood of this new Battlefield, the real buzz centers around a major shift in multiplayer architecture. Instead of relying purely on traditional client-server models, EA is experimenting with a hybrid system that includes dynamic server scaling. This means, in theory, matches could support larger player counts with smoother performance, even in chaos-heavy moments like full-scale vehicle warfare. They're also bringing back squad-based mechanics with deeper class specialization, each role having access to unique gadgets, combat perks, and even deployable assets. It's an attempt to make teamwork actually matter again, not just run-and-gun chaos. And while early closed playtests suggest promising feedback, let's be real. None of that matters if the monetization sinks the ship before it leaves port. Hey, real quick, if you're still here watching EA trip over its own shoelaces in slow motion, smash that like button. It takes half a second and 0 calories burned. Also drop a comment too. Tell me which EA franchise you used to love before they drove it into the ground. Or just type RIP BioWare if the pain's still fresh. That kind of fuels the algorithm and helps more people stumble into this digital graveyard tour. And if you're not subscribed yet, come on, don't be that one friend who dips before the finale. Hit that sub button, we're just getting started. Next up on the crumbling tower that is EA's future, The Sims. Most gamers probably don't think about this franchise unless they're building a pool just to delete the ladder. But make no mistake, this thing still prints money. There's a whole corner of the internet where The Sims is life. Like, they don't just play it, they live in it. And EA knows that. That's why they recently doubled down on The Sims 4, a game that came out back in 2014, instead of pushing forward with a proper The Sims 5. And yeah, let's call it what it is, they're scared. Because The Sims 4 has quietly evolved into a live service cash cow. Microtransactions, expansion packs, game packs, kits, packs for your packs. And all of it adds up to a mountain of recurring revenue. Starting over with a new game would mean risking all that. What if people don't migrate? What if The Sims 5 flops and the entire sim economy collapses? So EA said, you know what? Let's just keep patching the same game from a decade ago and hope nobody notices. The problem? People did notice, especially when Inzoi popped up. It's this new Korean life sim still in early access, but already showing off tech that makes The Sims 4 look like it's stuck in 2008. And now EA's left looking like that one kid in class still using Windows XP. You can only coast on nostalgia and DLC sales for so long before someone comes along and eats your lunch with ray-traced bathrooms and open-world social systems. And finally, we get to EA's last pillar, the one still barely holding up the roof. EA Sports. You know the drill, FIFA, or as it's now called, EA Sports FC. These games sell like crazy every year, especially in Europe, and they've got a solid fan base in the US too. But here's the catch. While sales numbers are still high, they're not as high as shareholders want them to be, which, in corporate speak, means the house is on fire. Take EA Sports FC 25, for example. It sold well, reviews weren't awful, players seem happy. Sounds like a win, right? Nope, not if you're EA. Because the real money isn't in the base game, it's in FIFA Ultimate Team. That's the golden goose, and this year, that goose laid slightly fewer eggs. And in EA's world, the same is unacceptable. They need exponential profit like they need oxygen. So anything less than a record-breaking year gets labeled a crisis. Even their other big sports win this year, reviving college football, ended up in the same situation. Strong launch, solid reception, but Ultimate Team revenue didn't meet expectations. Which is wild, because the game was doing fine. But fine doesn't pay for yachts with helipads. So now EA is stuck clinging to 3 creaky support beams, Battlefield, The Sims, and EA Sports, while the rest of their empire is in ruins. And now we get to the part where EA starts tripping over its own feet, repeatedly. Let's talk about Respawn Entertainment, which, let's be honest, is probably the only EA studio people still respect. They've been on fire in recent years with Apex Legends and the Jedi series, but even they couldn't escape EA's corporate curse. Mass layoffs? Check. Cancellation of a third Titanfall project? Also check. And instead of letting them focus on what they do best, making games people actually want to play, EA threw their creative lead onto the sinking ship that is Battlefield. Meanwhile, the rest of EA is chasing ghosts. They've got Motive working on an Iron Man game and Cliffhanger games on Black Panther, two Marvel projects that might have turned heads if they'd come out 5 years ago. But now, that hype train's long gone, and to get people to care again, these games will need to be absolute bangers. Which is a problem, because EA doesn't exactly have a recent track record of swinging for the fences. You just know they'll play it safe, slap a checklist on it, and pray nostalgia fills in the gaps. Then there's BioWare. Oh boy, this studio used to be legendary. Used to be. Now they're more of a legacy brand that gets name-dropped in gamer therapy sessions. 3 huge games in the last decade: Mass Effect Andromeda, Anthem, and Dragon Age: The Veilguard. And all 3 barely managed to hold anyone's attention for more than a long weekend. And Need for Speed? Don't even get me started. That franchise is like a car with 3 wheels and a GPS that only works in tunnels. EA stripped Criterion from Burnout, shoved them into Need for Speed, then turned them into a support team for DICE. Then they created Ghost Games to take the lead, but that didn't last either. They axed that, then brought Criterion back, only to shove them again into support duties. And now we're down to the last scraps of hope. There's Skate, which, don't get me wrong, has a loyal fan base and a ton of nostalgic value. But let's be real, this thing isn't about to become a flagship franchise. It's a passion project at best, not a lifeline for a dying empire. And then there's the new Mass Effect, which, yeah, nobody actually believes that's going to redeem anything. After Andromeda, expectations are so low you'd need a shovel to find them. Honestly, the best games EA's been associated with in the last few years, it takes 2 and a way out. And guess what? They weren't even made by EA. They were developed by Hazelight, an indie studio that just happened to let EA publish their stuff, and it shows. Hazelight still makes bold, creative, polished games, probably because EA doesn't own them. If EA bought Hazelight tomorrow, you already know the next game would be some weird co-op battle pass-driven NFT experiment with shoehorned microtransactions and no soul. So that's where we're at with EA. They've got a handful of things in the pipeline, sure. On paper, they're more active than Warner Brothers. But while Warner has a few big IPs with clear blockbuster potential, EA is just praying that Battlefield doesn't completely collapse under its own hype. And honestly, if it does, I don't know what happens next. Maybe they sell, maybe they shrink, maybe they finally go full mobile gacha and just embrace the dark side. Whatever it is, it's not looking good. One last note for the folks still holding out hope for Mass Effect. If they want that franchise to bounce back, they'll need to overhaul the core systems, especially the combat and squad AI. The original trilogy was famous for its tactical pause and command system, but Andromeda tossed that aside for a looser, action-heavy model. It stripped away the depth that gave players real control over the battlefield. If the new Mass Effect wants to feel like a true return to form, it needs to bring back meaningful team synergy, smart companion AI, and customizable builds that matter in both combat and dialogue trees. Without that, it's just another space shooter with fancy armor and emotional flashbacks. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think happens next with EA? Collapse? Redemption arc? Or just more awkward reboots? I read and replied to every single comment, so don't hold back. Hit that like button if you had a good time, and if you're not subscribed yet, fix that. We've got way more wild takes and deep dives coming your way.